relatively interesting. And for those of you who don't know who John Carmack is, he's basically the pioneer of persistent networks and 2.5D and then 3D with the transition from Doom to Quake. He's been involved in pretty much every evolutionary or revolutionary technology in the game industry. So, you know, from an 18, 19-year-old kid to one of the veterans of the industry, they put something together, and then at E3 2012 showed for the first time what was to be consumer-ready VR within a couple of years. And here we are, still not a very large company, 70 people, but it's all about quality, not quantity. It's about what you can do as an individual, and that sort of pervades our DNA of the company. We launched a Kickstarter campaign, raised about $2.5 million to basically pay for cost of goods so that we could ship out the developer kits. And believe it or not, just a year ago was the first time that we demonstrated the DK1, the first developer kit. 720p, 7-inch display panel, so effectively it was 640 by 800 per eye. Pretty low resolution, screen door effect maybe might resonate with some of you. But the point is, it was the first time that game developers really had access to what, in my own personal and professional experience, had been multi-million-dollar enterprise-level VR systems that were just absolutely inaccessible to anybody else. And so it was very exciting in GDC last year. We sold to date just over 55,000 of the first dev kits, which has been amazing, and we've seen incredible things happening with those kits. And then this year at GDC we announced the DK2, which is the first developer kit to introduce positional tracking, so it allows you to track and position in 3D space someone's head. And so we now have basically one-to-one real to virtual motion translation, where before we only had roll, pitch, and yaw, or 3 degrees of freedom from a static position. And we also now with the DK2 are offering 1080p split resolution with an OLED screen, so it's ultra responsive. It's enabled us to create what we call low persistence mode, which allows us to get rid of all the blur and judder effects and things like that. So for those of you out there who are trying to swim through the jargon, the bottom line is when consumers, or even when people for the first time now put on an Oculus Rift, it's a significantly more comfortable experience. And we're getting to the point where people just put it on and they forget that they're in a different place. They're able to not have to do any role playing on the technology side and say, oh, well, this doesn't feel right, but I'm going to pretend that I'm still here. They just put on the goggles and they really become transported. And it allows people to focus on the content and on the experience. And I think that's where the relationship with VC and developers across the world really makes a lot of sense. Interestingly enough, when we ship our consumer product, and it will be as close to perfect as possible, and we're very excited about when that happens, although I'm not going to tell you when that is tonight. Sorry, no spoilers. The platform itself will actually be hyper-performant, and we will be very confident in the capabilities of the hardware. But content and experiences will always be able to break VR, no matter how perfect the system is. If someone wanted to create a 5,000 revolution per second washing machine simulator, we could make anyone in this room dizzy, regardless of whether you're prone to motion sickness or not. So that's why it's so important for us that we're engaged with the community and talking with people about what makes VR work and what opportunities are sort of untapped and what sort of things you want to avoid doing. So who in here is actively developing for virtual reality? Fantastic. That's absolutely amazing. There was a point right after GDC last year, honestly, where we knew we had a list of what everyone was doing. And it was relatively short. It started to grow very quickly. And within a matter of weeks, it completely escaped us. And so now we find out about things through Reddit and Twitter and someone whispering in our ear. And we had a party last night to sort of celebrate along with our Kickstarters and developers who are enthusiastic about the space and people with just spring builds. And we'd seen stuff there for the first time as well. So it's really, really exciting. I think that one of the things that's happened over the course of the last year, let me start with technology. We've sort of graduated from the SD dev kit to an HD prototype that we showed at Gamescom and GDC Europe. And then in January of this year, we showed the Crystal Cove prototype, which was actually the younger brother of DK2, which we announced at the show, and the pre-orders went live earlier this week. A little aside on pre-orders, we had a little pool running at the office about how many pre-orders would hit, and I was off by an order of magnitude of 4x. So And it was about adding zeros to my number. So we were very happy with the reception, and people are just really excited. I think finally we're past the point where virtual reality is a niche technology, and people are realizing that it's a fundamentally new medium. And so the identity of this technology platform is really becoming established. Moving forward, what's really important for us beyond the technology is to engage with developers actively. And so there are two ways that we do that. Number one, we engage the community indirectly through regular updates on our blogs and forums. And that works pretty well. We just released recently a best practices guide, which goes through a lot of what we've learned over the course of our history. And then directly, we've sort of transitioned from a point where we were relatively reactive and capable of being reactive to almost anybody, to where we're very strategic about who we directly engage with. And so this is why the sense of community is just such an important part of the success of virtual reality. The community is self-policing, self-moderating, self-congratulating, and it's fantastic to see that there's enough hardware out there that people can start to understand what a good experience looks like and what a bad experience looks like. And it, in my mind, sort of represents a new paradigm in not only software product, but in hardware products, where we've sort of democratized the production of consumer electronics. And I think that that's really exciting. You know, the reason that this didn't happen years ago, I think, largely is in part to the fact that we didn't have 3D printers. We didn't have middleware and engines that we could leverage for this. We didn't have the social communications and feedback channels that we now have. The price of sensors and display panels that we thank the smartphone industry for, you know, is something that was an absolute dependency for making VR consumer ready. So all of these things have been very exciting for us, and now, at this GDC, for the first time, we're equally excited to see what some people refer to as competitors come into the space. But it's funny, back at CES, the rumors had started to churn about more people coming into the VR space on the platform side. And we would get lots of press and media and even other developers sort of poking and nudging and saying, "Oh, what do you think about these other guys? They're coming into the space, you know, like, you guys feel threatened or encroached upon?" And the reality is, my response has been and continues to be, for anyone who has the vision and the understanding of how disruptive virtual reality is going to be, congratulations to them. You know, if they really are willing and have the vision to put skin in the game and create a product, it's really, really hard. On the one hand, it's really, really easy. We did it with some 3D printers, but to do it right is really, really hard. And it's actually more like a fraternity of people who want to make VR happen than it is a competitive landscape of people trying to chew the meat off of the bone. So that time will come, no doubt. I have no doubt about that. But as of right now, it really feels magical. Where you know, beyond John Carmack, we also have folks like Michael Abrash and Tom Forsyth, and you know, this young kid Palmer, who's a boy genius and got on Bitcoin way before anyone else did, and is, yeah, I'll worship him forever for that. But it's a very exciting time. So at this point, you know, we really are engaging people strategically, focused on what sort of content needs to come into the portfolio of experiences that people will have in VR. The obvious thing when we first started off was, it's a first-person shooter, right? Almost everyone would say, I can't wait to play Call of Duty in VR. And that manifested with early ports of Half-Life and Team Fortress and a couple different games that people thought might be really magical. And it turns out that those experiences sometimes are not the ideal experiences. And so on the content side, what's been really exciting is to see that social experiences, real-time strategy games, platformers, side-scrollers, you know, simple card games and turret defense, even what we're showing over in the booth in the expo hall is a social experience where you're basically having this Super Smash Brothers experience in a virtual room, and you can see the other person and the motion from their head is being mapped onto an avatar. So I think I would predict that over the course of the next 6 months or a year, or however long it ends up being before we get to first consumer launch, you'll see a lot of innovation in non-FPS types of applications. It really is disruptive for academia. It's disruptive for real estate, product design, architecture. We have medical and military applications. telecommunications. So it's it's not the cure for cancer. It's not going to make some other technologies go away. People will still have flat panel TVs 10 years from now, I would predict. But as this technology becomes more and more miniaturized and more mass market, it's really going to change the way that we interact with technology. And most important, I would say, it changes the way that we interact with other people. It helps people to cross socioeconomic boundaries, where I can now have a social engagement with someone who's in Bangalore, India, or South Africa, or over in the Czech Republic, right? And we can connect with people and share spaces or go into a space where we share an experience. So the ability to connect people, I think, is really one of the most magical things that people are going to see emerging at this point moving forward. So to those of you in British Columbia, thank you very much, especially in the film and media space. You've been extremely progressive. We've seen very surprising things coming out of that, as well as interactive, of course. And I wanted to basically just leave a couple of minutes that I could answer some questions if anybody has any.
Any questions?
What's it like working with Carmack?
What's it like working with Carmack? It's funny, you talk with some of these people, and in your mind you're thinking, this is a guy who was creating 3D game engines when I was, in high school, or when I was reading comic books, or whatever it was. And you sort of build them up in your mind to be this very, aggrandized, sort of intimidating person. But John Carmack's actually a very approachable, normal guy who's just extremely enthusiastic about technology. It's interesting. I think people actually have the wrong impression about John, or maybe associate the wrong identity with him, because they attribute all of these incredible games to him, and it's true and it's deserved. But he's never been a game designer. He's always been a technology evangelist and innovator, right? I mean, he's been behind all these just foundational technologies for the game industry, and that's his passion now. I can expose and tell you, because it's been said publicly before, and he likes to tweet and talk, that he's basically 100% focused on Android. So you can think about what that means for virtual reality moving into the future, and he's just a magician, He's like a team that you give a task to, and the team would take a month and a half, and 4 hours later at 3 in the morning, he goes, you should check this out when you wake up. So it's really, really fun. Most of the people at the company, if not all, are just in their own category or in their own sort of genre of experience. They're just top of the class, and so it's really exciting and fun. Great. Looks like that's a wrap.
Yeah,
Thank you for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Aaron Davies. We've got a few minutes of recording has to run off, so if anybody wants a chance to chat with him and ask some more specific VR type of questions or anything like that, feel free. And thank you all for coming to our reception tonight. So all of you have a great rest of your GDC.